Hi BookTube, it's Missy. Happy Easter. Happy April Fool's Day. Happy Sunday. Happy whatever. Happy spring break. I'm excited. Yesterday was our first day of spring break. We went to Disneyland. We had a blast. And we are going to be going to Zion National Park on Tuesday until next week. So I am going to be gone for another week. So I have prepared a whole bunch of videos. Hopefully I can get them all edited and uploaded and scheduled so that they go out throughout the week and you guys have something to watch from me. Crossing my fingers that I am able to do everything. I have one more day. I have tomorrow as well. So this should work. Anyways, today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my March wrap-up. I planned on reading a whole bunch more, but I got sidetracked because the children were sick and all this other stuff happened, and so what can you do? Let's get on with the wrap-up. So I'm going to start off with, well, I don't know. I guess I'll just start off with the books that I finished, and then I'll talk about the books that I'm in the middle of that I would like to finish in the month of April. So the first book I want to talk about is Tithe by Holly Black. This was a buddy read with Dane Cobain. I will leave his channel link down below. It's Dane's Reads. He hated it. He read like 30 pages and DNF'd it, which is totally fine. This is a YA dark fairy tale story. It's not that dark. It's definitely a fairy tale story, but I really don't like Holly Black's writing. I never have, but these covers are so pretty, and I bought these a long time ago. This was like one of the trilogies that I purchased from Book Outlet back in 2014, and I didn't know any better. So I wanted to give this a go, especially since I had a buddy to read with, to figure out if I really wanted to keep these on my shelves or not. And I don't. I will be giving away the entire trilogy, of course, after I finish reading all of them. But the first one I gave 3.5 stars to. Is that correct? What did I write? Yeah, 3.5 stars. So this is about a girl who is a changeling, and she doesn't know she's a changeling until she's 17, when she gets called back to her grandma's house unexpectedly, and while she's there, two of her fairy friends from when she was little end up telling her about how there's this tithe where they need to sacrifice a human in order for the independent fairies, which means they're not part of the Seelie court or the unseelie court. They just live in the middle. If they can sacrifice a human, then they will have 7 years of freedom to run amok on Earth without having anything bad happen to them. Somehow our main character gets pulled into the plot, but she doesn't know about it. And she has feelings for this bad knight who works for the unseelie queen. And then this bad knight that works for the Seelie Queen takes over, and there's all this stuff happening, and her friends end up dying, and just, it's so random. It's random. I know that someone here on BookTube said that the second one is absolutely horrible, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. I never DNF, so we'll see if I can manage to get through the entire second book. Yeah, that's all I can say. It's a YA fairy tale book about a changeling who falls in love with a knight, and she doesn't know anything about being a fairy. She's actually a pixie, and she has to learn along the way. And then there's this great plot with the two courts and this war going on and a sacrifice, and I don't know. The only thing I like about this book is how chunky it is. I like these little baby chunky books. I don't know why. So there's the first book I read. The second book I read is a classic. It's Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I read this to my children. They absolutely loved it, and then we watched the movie. What's your favorite character from this book? I, of course, love Wilbur and Charlotte, but I really like Templeton. He's just so selfish. He's not like that in the movie. He's so mean in this book. He's like, why would I care if Wilbur dies? I could care less. And the goose has to say, look, dude, if you don't help save Wilbur, you're going to starve to death and die because you won't have any food to eat. And he's like, ugh, fine. It was just really funny. Yeah, I enjoyed it. If you haven't read this children's classic, I would definitely pick it up. It is cute. It's very short. And I like the movie better because it's got music. That one doesn't have music, obviously. So there's that one. Next, I have Gustav Gloom and the People Taker by Adam Troy Castro, illustrated by Kristen Margiotta. Kristen has amazing skills when it comes to these little illustrations. I freaking think they are so adorable. Absolutely love them. Just the big heads and the creepy eyes. It's very Tim Burton-esque. Okay, so I kind of talked about this book in my book haul, which you guys will be seeing in the next couple days. Basically, we have Fernie here, who her last name is What, which I think is funny. So her name is Fernie What, and her sister Pearlie What and Mr. What, their father. They also have a cat named Harrington, which is very cute. They live in a highlighter pink salmon colored house, and Gustav Gloom lives across the street in a dark, gloomy shadow house. Now, one day, Harrington leaves the kitchen through the window and charges to their next door neighbor's house. The door is slightly open, and he strolls on in. Fernie, being a little girl and loving her cats, chases after Harrington into this dark, creepy house and realizes it's not what she thinks it's going to be. Like, the outside looks creepy but normal. The inside is just bizarre. And she comes upon Gustav Gloom, who is the exact same age as her, lived here his whole life, and he's trying to get her out of the house because there is a scary antagonist called the People Taker who goes around and steals people and throws them into a bottomless pit for the Dark Lord Obsidian of, you know, the scary dark world underground. And so, yeah. Gustav's trying to get Fernie out so she doesn't get taken by the People Taker. The People Taker really needs to meet his quota so he can do whatever he wants. He needs 2 more people, and he has his eyes set on Fernie. Yes, very strange book. What I liked about this book so much is that the vocabulary is very higher up. So even though the whole book itself could be read by like 3rd or 4th grade, some of the words are 5th, 6th, 7th grade words. So it will help kids with vocabulary if they're looking up words and definitions to figure out what they mean. On the other hand, there's lots of run-on sentences. So if you don't have a lot of breath behind your reading, if you're reading it out loud, you might die of lack of oxygen. So, yes, really, really enjoyed this book. It is creepy, not super scary. Any age can read this book, but some of the vocabulary is higher up, so they'll have to look up definitions unless you are reading it out loud and you explain what these words are. I am excited to continue on with the series. Alright, the last novel that I completed in March was The Hazelwood by Melissa Alpert. This one came out in January, I believe. I've been dying to read this. It is supposed to be Alice in Wonderland-esque, and it is in a way. It's Alice in Wonderland-esque because the main character's name's Alice, and there is a somewhat of a wonderland. That's basically it. There's nothing else that is like Alice besides those 2 things. So we have a girl, again, named Alice, who has been on the run with her mom her whole life. She's 16 or 17 now, and I think it's 16. She's 16. She's been running her whole life because she's being chased by bad luck. Whenever they live in a certain place, it'll flood, or it'll look like someone broke into the house, or there'll be dead animals, or something always bad happens, and so they're not able to live in one place for very long. One day they get a letter from the mother's mom, the grandma, saying that she has died and they have now inherited the Hazelwood house if they want, The mom is very excited because she believes all of this bad luck has been stemmed from the grandma, and so she thinks that they won't have to run anymore. So she gets married and thinks that her life is going to be happily ever after, but the bad things continue to happen, and our main character loses her mom. The mom is abducted, and she decides that she's going to go to the Hazelwood house in search of her mother, but what she finds out is the truth of who she is, where she came from, and how she came to be who she is today. So very, very cool. There is a total fairy tale world that she gets to go to, and there are fairy tale creatures, and it's all very dark and twisted. What she learns is that her grandma is a writer of fairy tale stories, and that these fairy tale stories are dark for the sake of being dark. There's no happy endings, there's no revenge, there's no morals to these stories. They're just dark for the sake of being dark. Now, if you've read some of the comments on Goodreads about this book, someone complained that this book makes no sense and that it's dark just for the sake of it. There's no happy ending, moral, whatever, yada yada, for this book as well. And that ties in totally to what the book is about, because it's all about the fairy tales. And so this book will then in turn be reflective of the fairy tales. So if you're picking up this book thinking that there's going to be a moral or a happy ending, think again. The ending is kind of, not abrupt, but it left me confused. I did give this book 4 stars. I didn't enjoy the ending, but I enjoyed everything else. And the fairy tales are told in this story, and they are very creepy and twisted and dark, and I really enjoyed it. It makes me want to read all of those fairy tales in real life, which is always a good thing. I think this might be her debut novel. I could be completely wrong, but I am definitely looking forward to reading more books by Melissa Albert. These are the end pages. They're very cool. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So if you were thinking about picking this up, I would. It was good. Hello again. I'm in a new location. Okay, I was just editing my wrap-up, and I realized I missed a book. Because I didn't have the physical copy with me. That was A Woman in the Window. I can't remember her name right now. I will leave the author's name here on the bottom of the video. Yeah, Woman in the Window was a adult thriller, psychological thriller, and I read it at the beginning of the month, but I had to turn it into the library because it was due right away. So basically, it's about a woman who has agoraphobia, and she has been locked in her house for the last 10 months. She's been working on leaving her house through therapy. Her therapist has her going out her back steps with an umbrella, kind of to get her used to being outside. But what the lady does during most of the day is drink heavily. She drinks like 3 bottles of red wine a day. She mixes it with all of her medication. She's taking a whole bunch of different medications for depression and anxiety and so forth. And then she people watches. So she lives not in a cul-de-sac, but on a street, and she knows all of her neighbors and pretty much everything that they do. She watches them with her Nikon camera. I think it's a Nikon. I guess it doesn't really matter. But she watches them through the lens of her camera, and occasionally takes pictures of her neighbors. Now, she does develop these pictures, and she uses it kind of for therapy, but really just because she's nosy about the outside world. And one day, a new family moves in next door, and there is a mom, a dad, and a son. The son comes over and introduces himself, gives her a candle, says, how, his mom sent him over, yada yada. And she becomes very obsessed and interested with this family. Now, one day she's looking out of her window and she notices that the mom of the next door neighbors is being stabbed and murdered. And the story goes from there. So she calls the police and tries to go outside to help the neighbor, and has a panic attack and passes out on her front steps and is then put in a hospital, and the police are like asking her all these questions. So she's an unreliable witness because she's drinking heavily, mixing it with, I'm in the kitchen, obviously, this is her fridge. She's mixing it with her medication, which she has some antipsychotic medication which can cause delusions or what's it called? Oh my gosh, what is it called? When you see things. Anyways, you guys know what I'm talking about. So they don't trust her about her neighbor, and meanwhile the boy keeps coming over complaining about his dad and how he doesn't like being at the house, and the dad comes over as well and says stay away from the son. So this lady is stuck in her house with agoraphobia, believes that she's seen a murder, and doesn't know how to fix this. So when you read this book, if you have read Girl on the Train, it's kind of like that, because you have an alcoholic, unreliable witness and there's a murder mystery going on, and it's kind of like the girl, or not the girl, but the woman in Cabin 10, because there again is an unreliable witness and there is a murder that nobody believes happened. So you have those two books. If you've read both of those two books, then you will be familiar with the writing style in this book. There was a twist at the end, which I kind of, just a smidgen, saw coming, and I don't know. I think I gave the book 3.54 stars. It was good. It wasn't great. I didn't like a lot of the characters. Even our main character just seemed, I don't know. It was hard because she's stuck at home all day. I get that, but even though she knows, and she used to be a psychologist, so she knows as a doctor that drinking and taking those medications is a bad thing to do, but she's so stuck in a rut that she can't control herself. And so I don't know, it was hard to sympathize with her, especially since she wasn't trying to help herself. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the book. It was good for a thriller. Not the best, but if you like those two authors, Ruth Ware and Paula Hawkins, then you might like, I think it's A.G. Finn. I could be completely wrong. Anyways, yes, so that was the book that I forgot to add in this video. And the last two books that I completed in March were the two graphic novels, Giant Days Volume 5 and Giant Days Volume 6. It just continues on with their shenanigans in college. Prior to making or reading these books, I could have sworn that the girls were already in their second year of college, but they're not. They end up becoming sophomores in college during book 5 or volume 5. They are finishing up school, and then this is the summer of sophomore year, and then we have volume 6, which is all of sophomore year, or at least parts of sophomore year. I gave this one 5 stars, this one 4 stars, because this was a little bit dramatic. They're having love issues, job issues, and Susan is very ill, and she accepts her dad to come into the house and, you know, bring her back to health, but basically she's just pretending she's a baby, and the girls are like, you need to snap out of it. We're grown women. We can be independent and manage on our own. Tell your dad to go home. It was very cute and funny. All right, if you've never read Giant Days, I don't know what you're waiting for. Pick them up. They're funny. They're very, very good. I absolutely love it. It's like a soap opera for college students. It's good. The last couple books that I want to talk about are the ones that I am currently still in the middle of reading. So I have my very nice here Dark Tower Illustrated edition of book 7 in the Dark Tower series. I am currently just maybe halfway, a little bit below halfway into this book. I'm going to put this on hold for a little while because I do want to catch up with the King books that I'm supposed to be reading for the Stephen King 2018 read-along. I haven't been able to do that yet, and I'm at a point where it's going to change the rest of the dynamic of the storyline. One of the quartet is very badly hurt, and I am not looking forward to the aftermath of what this means to the group. And so I think this is a good time to put this down for a bit so I can pick up the 2 books that I'm currently supposed to be reading. Last month's March pick for the Stephen King 2018 read-along was Dolores Claiborne. So I'm supposed to read this. This was what I was supposed to read in March, and I didn't. And then we have The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, which is the pick for April. And I just want to get these 2 done and read so I'm not so far behind. So I'm putting The Dark Tower on hold until I finish those very short books. It shouldn't take too long. The next book that I started but didn't finish is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This is very good as well. I am reading it with Penelope. She has already finished it. I meant to finish it, but I didn't. I am exactly halfway through. We just hit a huge plot twist, and now I'm just like freaking out, wondering what's going to happen next. So looking forward to finishing that. And these are the 2 books that I'm currently reading to my children. I read 1 standalone and then 1 series each night, so that way we can get through more than 1 book, and I just read 1 chapter per. So this is book 2 of the Gustav Gloom series. This is The Nightmare Vault. Pearlie and Fernie are having to deal with this killer ice cream man, and Gustav hasn't been notified yet, so we'll find out what happens next. And then we have Rump here, which is by Liesl Shirtliff. This is the true story of Rumpelstiltskin, which is very cute. We learn about Rump when he's a baby, and he's a little kid about 10 right now, and he's learning about the spinning wheel and how he can turn straw into gold. So that's very interesting. The children are liking it. All right, and lastly, I have Meddling Kids by Edgar Quintero. This is due to the library, and I think I'm just going to turn it in. I only read 22 pages of it, and what I read sounded interesting, but I just haven't picked it back up yet. And if I don't pick this up before the due date, I'll just borrow it again later. It just hasn't caught my interest since I've been reading more books, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, and those are all the books that I completed and I'm currently reading, which will then be rolled over to April. Let me know down below what you read in March. What was your favorite? Have you read the books that I did? Let me know what you thought of them. And that is it. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!